In the autumn of 1929, crowds gathered outside the financial buildings of Lower Manhattan. Men in dark coats stared at scraps of paper. Inside the New York Stock Exchange, prices were collapsing faster than clerks could record them. Fortunes vanished in hours. Banks failed, factories closed. Families across the United States lost homes, savings, and jobs because of decisions made in a few crowded blocks near Wall Street. New York had become so powerful that when it stumbled, the entire country fell with it. That was 1929. But the story of New York begins thousands of years before anyone imagined skyscrapers, stock exchanges, or a city large enough to shake a nation. Long before Manhattan was covered in concrete, it was part of Lenapehoking, the ancestral homeland of the Lenape people. The island was a landscape of forests, marshes, streams, and fertile shoreline. Communities planted crops, hunted, fished, traded, and traveled along trails crossing the island. One of those routes would eventually become Broadway. Before it became one of the most famous streets on Earth, it was an indigenous path. The Lenape did not see Manhattan as empty wilderness waiting to be discovered. It was already known, inhabited, and connected to a wider world. In 1609, Henry Hudson entered the region while searching for a route to Asia. He did not find one. He found a deep, protected harbor that European merchants immediately understood could make them rich. The Dutch West India Company established New Amsterdam at the southern end of Manhattan. Its purpose was not freedom or the creation of a great city. It was business. Beaver pelts from the interior could travel down the Hudson, be loaded onto ships and sold in Europe. From the beginning, the settlement existed because goods could move through it. In 1626, Dutch officials reported acquiring Manhattan through an exchange valued at 60 guilders. The event later became a cheerful legend about Europeans buying the island for almost nothing. But the truth was more complicated. The Dutch treated land as property that could be permanently purchased. The Lenape understood land through different traditions and likely believed they were granting shared use, not surrendering their homeland forever. What looked like a transaction in a European record became the beginning of generations of displacement. New Amsterdam was muddy, noisy, and remarkably diverse. Merchants lived beside sailors, laborers, Africans, Jews, Germans, and Scandinavians. Enslaved Africans built roads, cleared land, and helped create the settlement's foundation. The city that would later celebrate freedom was being built partly through forced labor. In 1664, English warships entered the harbor and demanded surrender. New Amsterdam fell with almost no fighting and was renamed New York after the Duke of York. The flag changed, the government changed, but the city's central purpose did not. It remained a machine for trade. Geography gave that machine an extraordinary advantage. New York stood beside a vast Atlantic harbor, and the Hudson opened a route inland. Ships arrived from Europe, the Caribbean, and other colonies. Cargo could be unloaded, insured, financed, and sold. Every crate passing through the port created another layer of business. During the American Revolution, that advantage made New York a target. British forces captured the city in 1776 and occupied it for most of the war. Fires destroyed sections of Manhattan, and prison ships nearby became scenes of disease and death. Yet when the British departed in 1783, New York recovered quickly. 6 years later, George Washington took the oath as the first President of the United States at Federal Hall. For a brief moment, New York was the capital of the new republic. The government soon moved elsewhere. New York barely slowed down. Politics had left, but commerce remained. Then, in 1825, a narrow artificial waterway transformed the city's future. The Erie Canal connected the Hudson River to the Great Lakes. It gave farmers and merchants in the expanding interior a practical route to the Atlantic. Grain, timber, and raw materials flowed east. Manufactured and imported goods flowed west. Other ports had access to the sea. New York now had access to the continent. The canal turned the city into the front door of the American economy. Money followed the cargo. Banks, insurers, warehouses, newspapers, shipping firms, and law offices multiplied. Wall Street became the place where the risks and ambitions of a growing nation were bought and sold. But wealth created hunger for labor, and labor arrived by ship. During the 19th century, waves of immigrants entered New York. Irish families fleeing famine crowded into tenements. German craftsmen opened workshops. Later came Italians, Russian Jews, Poles, Greeks, and millions of others. Between 1892 and 1954, more than 12 million immigrants passed through Ellis Island. For many, the first image of America was the Statue of Liberty rising above the harbor. But the promise behind that statue was never guaranteed. New arrivals often found dangerous factories, low wages, cramped rooms, and streets overflowing with garbage and people. Children worked. Disease spread easily. Fire could race through packed buildings before residents escaped. And still they came, because even brutal opportunity could appear better than no opportunity at all. Immigrants dug tunnels, laid track, unloaded ships, sewed clothing, built houses, opened restaurants, and created neighborhoods carrying pieces of the old world into the new one. New York did not simply receive immigrants. It converted their labor, skills, food, music, and ambitions into American culture. But diversity did not erase conflict. In July 1863, anger over Civil War conscription exploded into 4 days of mob violence. A system allowing wealthier men to avoid service fueled working-class rage, which turned especially against black New Yorkers. Homes were destroyed, and a black orphanage was burned. The City of Opportunity revealed how quickly fear, racism, and inequality could tear it apart. New York survived, but survival required reinvention. As the population grew, Manhattan became almost impossible to move through. Streets jammed with horses, wagons, streetcars, and pedestrians. Engineers began looking above the streets, below them, and across the rivers. The Brooklyn Bridge opened in 1883. Its stone towers and steel cables carried people above the East River. It was more than a bridge. It was proof that American engineering could overcome geography. In 1898, Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, and Staten Island became one city. In 1904, the first subway line opened. For 5 cents, passengers could travel beneath streets that had once taken hours to cross. The subway did more than move people. It made the modern city possible, allowing workers to live farther from business districts and opening entire neighborhoods to development. Then New York began building upward. Steel frames and elevators broke the old limits of architecture. The Flatiron, Woolworth, Chrysler, and Empire State Buildings turned the skyline into a competition measured in floors. These towers were offices, advertisements, and monuments to expensive land. Europe had ancient cathedrals and palaces. New York had skyscrapers. By the early 20th century, the city handled a huge share of America's international trade. Its banks financed railroads and factories. Its publishers shaped what Americans read, its theaters shaped what they watched, and its garment factories dressed the country. New York was not the political capital of America. It had become something more difficult to control. It was the capital of attention. In Harlem, black migrants from the South and immigrants from the Caribbean created one of the most important cultural movements in the nation's history. Writers, musicians, artists, and activists built the Harlem Renaissance. Jazz moved through clubs and theaters. New literature challenged racist assumptions. New York did not invent every form of American culture, but it had an unmatched ability to gather people, intensify their work, and broadcast it to the world. Then came the crash of 1929. The financial system that had built industries and fortunes became the center of a national catastrophe. The Great Depression emptied offices, closed businesses, and pushed unemployed New Yorkers into breadlines. Yet construction continued on the Empire State Building. Workers balanced on steel beams hundreds of feet above the street while the country below struggled to survive. The building opened in 1931, a nearly empty giant in a city without enough tenants to fill it. It looked absurd. It also looked defiant. World War II revived the economy. The port moved troops and supplies, and factories produced military goods. After the war, the United Nations established its headquarters in Manhattan. Television, publishing, fashion, music, and advertising turned New York into a global factory of images and ideas. But success did not protect the city forever. By the 1970s, manufacturing jobs were disappearing, residents were leaving for the suburbs, neighborhoods suffered from disinvestment, and the city government was running out of money. In 1975, New York came close to bankruptcy. Buildings burned in neglected districts. Crime and fear shaped daily life. The subway, once a symbol of progress, became a symbol of decay. To many outsiders, the city that had represented the future now looked like a warning. But New York has always had a strange ability to turn collapse into material for reinvention. Hip-hop grew from block parties in the Bronx. Punk took over small downtown clubs. Artists turned cheap industrial spaces into studios. Immigrant communities rebuilt commercial streets across Queens, Brooklyn, and the Bronx. The crisis was real, but so was the creativity growing inside it. Finance returned. Tourism expanded. Industrial neighborhoods became residential and cultural districts. The city became safer and richer, though recovery also brought rising costs and displacement. New York's greatest strength was its ability to attract ambition. Its greatest danger was that success could push out the people whose work created it. Then, on the morning of September 11, 2001, hijacked airplanes struck the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center. The buildings that symbolized New York's place in the global economy burned and collapsed before the world. Thousands were killed in New York, at the Pentagon, and in Pennsylvania. Lower Manhattan disappeared beneath smoke, dust, paper, and twisted steel. For a moment, the city famous for speed stopped completely. Firefighters, police officers, medical workers, construction crews, volunteers, and ordinary residents entered the disaster zone. Missing person posters covered walls and fences. Funerals continued for months. The attack changed American security, warfare, and public life. But it also revealed something skyscrapers and financial markets could never explain. New York was not powerful only because of its buildings. It was powerful because millions of people had learned to live beside strangers and depend on one another. The towers were gone, but the city remained. Today, New York contains every layer that came before it. Lenape trails beneath the grid. Dutch trade beneath Wall Street, immigrant labor inside bridges and tunnels, and African-American creativity inside global culture. It remains a place of extraordinary wealth and painful inequality, magnificent architecture, and public struggle. New York did not build America by itself, but it became the machine through which much of America moved. Its harbor connected the nation to the world. Its canal connected the coast to the interior. Its banks financed expansion. Its immigrants supplied labor and ideas. Its newspapers, theaters, studios, and networks created a national culture. Its crises forced the country to confront speculation, inequality, racism, terrorism, and urban decline. The city began as a trading post on land that was already someone else's home. It became a colonial port, a temporary national capital, an immigrant gateway, an industrial giant, a financial command center, a cultural laboratory, and a target visible around the world. It has burned, crashed, nearly gone bankrupt, and buried its dead. Each time, it rebuilt. Not because New York is indestructible, because New York has never been one thing long enough to be destroyed completely.